Some nights, the world feels too bright even after the lights are off. Not because the room around you is loud, maybe it is quiet where you are, but because your mind has been carrying the day like a full bowl of water, careful not to spill. And now, at last, you can set that bowl down. So tonight, you don't have to understand everything. You don't have to remember every name, every date, every turning of history. You can simply listen the way you listen to wind moving through trees. This is only a gentle walk, slow as breathing, through a place where time rests. If you like, take one easy breath in and let it out as though you're unfastening a button at your collar. I want to invite you into a museum after hours, when the last footsteps have faded and the galleries become a soft ocean of silence. The air is cooler there, touched by stone and old paper. The lights are not bright, they are a warm amber, as if someone has placed small lanterns along the walls for the night to feel safe. And in one quiet room, behind a sheet of glass, a small clay tablet lies like a closed eyelid. It is not gold, it is not jeweled, it does not shine. It is the color of earth after rain, brown with a hint of warmth. Tiny wedge-shaped marks cover its surface, neat and patient, like little footprints in sand. This tablet is one of the oldest ways a human being ever tried to hold a thought still. It comes from the world of ancient Sumer, in the land between two rivers, Tigris and Euphrates, where cities rose from marsh and dust. And it carries a question that has been sleeping for thousands of years. Before we drift deeper into tonight's gentle journey, remember to subscribe to Ancient Sleep Story. Here, you'll always find peaceful stories that soothe the heart and quiet the mind. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment. Your presence adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. If you are listening from a bedroom, perhaps you can feel the softness of your pillow. If you are listening from a living room, maybe there is a faint hum from the house itself, settling. Wherever you are, there is a doorway here and we can step through it together. Can you hear the wind where you are? A gentle breeze, just enough to remind me of a desert wind sweeping across the ruins. Because the story begins with wind. In southern Iraq, the desert is a wide hush, stitched with the darker ribbons of riverbeds. At night, the land cools and the sky opens like a great bowl filled with stars. The wind moves across the plains, carrying fine dust that once touched bricks, reeds, and human hands. In that land, people built with mud and patience. They shaped bricks from clay, dried them in the sun, and stacked them into walls and temples. They dug canals so water could be guided into fields. They counted barley, stored dates and wool. They invented cities, streets and courtyards, workshops and gardens. And then, in a moment that was probably as ordinary as any other, someone pressed a reed stylus into wet clay and made the first marks of writing, not to carve a heroic boast, but to remember something practical, a delivery, a tally, a promise. Writing began like a whisper of daily life. If you've ever written a list on a tired evening, you understand the feeling, the small relief of putting the swirling thoughts into a simple order. The museum, you stand close to the glass. You can't touch the tablet, but you can imagine it. Imagine it warm in your palm, gently tempered, clay that once held the sun. Imagine your thumb tracing the edge where it has chipped and feeling the faint texture of those wedges, each one pressed with intention. Sometimes, when conservators hold these tablets, they can still see fingerprints left by the person who made them, soft ridges pressed into the clay before it dried, a small human signature quieter than a name. And that is one reason this story can feel calming, because it is not only about gods or kings, it is about touch. It is about the ordinary need to remember. It is about a mind like yours trying to steady itself by putting something down in a way that would not blow away. Let's slow down again. Notice your jaw. If it is holding, let it loosen. Let your tongue rest. Let your shoulders fall the way a coat falls onto a chair. In the museum, the tablet rests behind glass and the room around it is dim. Other artifacts share the darkness: a small stone seal carved with animals, a broken bowl that once held grain, a cylinder seal that could roll tiny pictures onto clay like a ring. They all look like they are sleeping. The last school group is gone. The gift shop is dark. The building is no longer a busy place. It is a sanctuary for objects that have outlived their owners. And the quiet here feels different from the quiet of a bedroom. It is the quiet of preserved time. Somewhere behind a closed door, an old ventilation system exhales softly like a sleeping animal. A green exit sign glows, steady and kind. Your footsteps, imagined, not real, are slow enough to hear the fabric of your clothes shift. In this quiet, your own heartbeat becomes part of the exhibit, a gentle drum that reminds you, you are alive now, and the past is only visiting for a moment, then returning to rest. Far from this museum, in the real desert, the ruins of Sumerian cities still exist as low mounds, soft hills in flat land. Inside those mounds are layers, bricks, ash, broken pottery, fallen walls, and sometimes clay tablets stacked in rooms that once served as archives. When archaeologists began digging, they found thousands of tablets, as if an ancient city had tried to keep its paperwork safe forever. They were records of life, inventories, letters, contracts, hymns, training exercises for students. It is easy to picture the scribes who made them, not as dramatic figures, but as steady people who sat at low tables with bowls of wet clay beside them. Their reed stylus was cut at an angle, so each press made a clean wedge. Their work required patience and rhythm. Press, lift, a gentle tapping like quiet rain on a window. In Sumerian schools, tablet houses, students copied signs again and again until their hands learned the shapes without strain. Imagine the calm of that repetition. Imagine how the mind, when it focuses on small motions, begins to let go of everything else. This is one reason the tablet before you feels like a lullaby. It carries the memory of a slow craft. And yet among the lists and receipts there were also questions, not shouted questions, not rebellious ones, questions folded into the clay the way a leaf can be pressed inside a book and forgotten until years later. One question in particular has traveled a very long way to reach your night. It is simple enough to hold in a tired mind like a smooth stone. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? You don't have to answer it. You don't have to chase it. You can just let it sit beside you. In Sumer, the gods were present in the way the city was organized. Temples were not only places of prayer, they were places of storage and planning. Grain moved in and out, wool was measured, beer was brewed, workers were assigned. The temple was like a heartbeat that kept the city in order. And because the temple needed to keep track of everything, scribes wrote everything down. That is how we know about the offerings, not as dramatic sacrifices, but as steady entries in an ancient ledger. 50 loaves, 3 sheep, 20 jars of beer. A neat line that ends with the quiet assurance, no shortage recorded. There is something hypnotic about that rhythm. Numbers and nouns, like counting waves when you cannot sleep. 50 loaves, 3 sheep, 20 jars of beer. A calm list for a calm mind. But behind the calm, there is always the human heart. A heart that wonders, a heart that asks why. Perhaps the scribe who pressed that question into clay had looked up at the night sky after a long day of work. Perhaps he had watched Venus brighten near the horizon, steady and pale, and felt the same soft ache we feel when something beautiful is far away. The Sumerians watched the sky carefully. They tracked the moon. They followed the slow, wandering paths of bright planets. They kept records across generations because they understood that the heavens move in long, patient cycles. Imagine it. A line of people, teacher to student, passing down the habit of looking up, the same way you might pass down a lullaby. And in all that looking, they would have felt something that still feels true. That knowledge is light, and light can be shared. So why, the scribe wonders, would a wise God keep light hidden? When you're tired, questions like this can either sharpen the mind or soften it. Tonight, we choose the softer way. We let the question be a small lantern, not an alarm. We let it glow gently in the corner of the room, because in the next part of our story, we will take a slow walk deeper into the museum, closer to the tablet, until the glass seems to vanish and time begins to loosen, until we can step quietly into the temple archive where the tablet was born. For now, you can simply rest in the feeling of the room. Warm light, cool air, the hush of old stone, a single piece of clay holding a patient question, and you, here, safe in the present, allowed to listen without effort, allowed to drift while the past keeps its careful watch. The museum seems even quieter as you move deeper into it, as if each hallway absorbs a little more sound. The ceiling lights are low and honey-colored, and the glass cases catch that glow the way calm water catches moonlight. If it helps, let your breathing match that softness. Inhale gently, as though you're smelling warm paper. Exhale slowly, as though you're fogging a window and watching the mist fade. Ahead of you, the tablet waits, but before we step closer, let's let the mind settle into something simple, a few steady questions that don't demand an answer, only presence. Who made the marks? What were they trying to keep safe? Where did the clay come from? When did the reed touch the wet surface? Why would a question be written down at all? How did it survive? Through fire, through sand, through centuries of forgetting. You don't have to solve any of this. You can just let these questions float like small boats on a dark river. In the glass, you see your own reflection faintly, an outline, soft around the edges, standing beside something far older than memory. And it feels, for a moment, as though the boundary between then and now is not a wall, but a thin veil, like a curtain moving in night air. The tablet is small enough to fit in two hands. It is not fragile in the way a flower is fragile. It is fragile in the way a promise is fragile, because it depends on care. Imagine, for a moment, that the glass is no longer there. Imagine you are allowed, just for this story, to lift the tablet from its resting place. It is heavier than you expect, dense with earth. The surface is cool but not cold, more like a stone that has been shaded all day. And as you tilt it, the wedge marks catch light in tiny shadows like ripples caught at dusk. This is cuneiform, writing made from presses and angles, from patience and repetition. Each sign is a little structure, each line is a path. Now let the museum dissolve, slowly, like a dream dissolving into another dream. The warm amber lights become the last light of a late afternoon long ago. The polished floor becomes packed earth. The faint hum of the building becomes wind moving through reeds. We are in southern Mesopotamia, in the land between the rivers. The air is warm, but softening as the sun lowers. The sky is wide, pale at the horizon, deeper blue above. You can feel, even in imagination, the presence of water somewhere nearby, canals and river branches that bring life into fields. The smell is faintly sweet, wet clay, green reeds, distant smoke from cooking fires. Ahead rises a temple platform, steps made of mud brick, edges worn by many feet. It is not a place of fear in this telling, it is a place of order, a place where the city gathers its rhythm, grain counted, work assigned, offerings arranged, festivals planned. And inside, away from the bright courtyard, there is an archive. It is cooler there, the walls keep the heat out, the light is dim, filtered through a doorway or a high slit window. Dust floats in the air like slow snow. This is where the tablets live when they are new, not as museum pieces, as tools, as memory. A scribe sits at a low table. He is not a king, not a warrior, not a hero in shining armor. He is a person who has learned to make marks that matter. His hair is tied back. His robe is simple. His posture is steady, the way your posture becomes steady when you have done something many times. Beside him is a bowl of damp clay, small lumps shaped into flat ovals like thick cookies. A reed stylus rests in his hand. The tip has been cut so it can press clean angles into the surface. Press, lift, turn, press. The sound is gentle, soft taps like quiet rain, not loud enough to wake anyone, not sharp enough to disturb the air. This is how writing begins, with a hand practicing stillness. And if your mind has been racing today, you might notice how pleasant it is to imagine this steady repetition. It is the opposite of scrolling, the opposite of rushing. It is a small ritual that creates order without violence. In the temple archive, tablets are everywhere. Some are stacked on shelves, some are piled in baskets, some are drying near a wall, their wet surfaces turning firm as the air takes their moisture away. Each tablet holds something specific: a delivery of barley, a list of workers, a receipt for wool, a note to a supervisor, a simple contract, a student's practice lines. And among them, in the quiet corners, there are tablets that hold more than numbers. There are hymns spoken like gentle praise. There are stories told like river currents. There are questions pressed so softly they seem almost shy. The scribe is writing one of those quieter things tonight. Perhaps he has been trained to begin each tablet with a proper heading, a careful name, a place in the temple system. Perhaps he knows that order is how the city stays fed. But he also knows something else. He knows that knowledge can be carried, and he knows that sometimes knowledge feels just out of reach. Maybe it began with the sky. In Mesopotamia, the heavens were not a distant decoration. They were a calendar, a guide, a mirror. People looked up to measure time, months by the moon, seasons by the sun, patterns by the slow wanderings of bright planets. Venus, especially, returns again and again, morning star, evening star, appearing, disappearing, reappearing, as if it is practicing the art of leaving and coming back. Imagine the scribe stepping outside after a day of work. The air is cooler now. The city sounds are soft, a distant donkey, a child laughing far away, the faint clink of pottery being set down. He looks up. Venus is there, bright and calm, not hurried. And in that moment, a thought comes, quiet, persistent, like a pebble in the shoe of the mind. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? In our story, the scribe does not argue with the thought. He does not turn it into a fire. He simply carries it back to the archive, the way you might carry a worry into a journal instead of into bed. He presses the question into clay, one wedge at a time. And as he writes, the act of writing itself becomes a kind of answer, not to the question, but to the feeling behind it. Because writing says, you are allowed to wonder. Writing says, you are allowed to place your wonder somewhere safe. Writing says you do not have to keep it spinning in your chest all night. So the tablet becomes a resting place. If you like, notice how that mirrors what you are doing right now. You are listening. You are letting the day settle. You are placing your thoughts into the hands of a story, so you do not have to hold them alone. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. Back in the archive, the scribe finishes the final mark and sets the stylus down. He turns the tablet slightly, checking the lines. The clay is still wet enough to accept a correction, but he is careful. This is not about perfection, it is about care. He places the tablet on a shelf to dry. For now, it will harden in air. Later, it may be baked intentionally to preserve it, or accidentally, if fire comes to the city. Either way, clay remembers. Clay holds shape. Clay is patient. And the question begins its long sleep. Outside the archive, evening deepens. The temple courtyard grows quiet, and the last sunlight slides along the edges of brick like a slow hand smoothing a blanket. Somewhere a jar is set down and the sound is round and gentle. A lamp is lit, one small flame guarded by a clay bowl, and its light trembles in the doorway. The scribe washes his hands in a basin, rubbing away the fine dust of clay from his fingertips. For a moment he studies the water as it darkens, then clears again. He does not hurry. He listens to the city settling. Distant murmurs, a dog's brief bark, the soft hush of sandals on packed earth. He thinks of the tablet drying on its shelf, and he feels no urgency to chase the question tonight. It is enough that the question has a home. It is enough that tomorrow will come at its own pace, like the river moving in the dark. Above him, the first stars appear, calm, untouched, patient tonight. Centuries pass the way a calm breath passes. Cities rise and soften back into earth. Walls crumble, roof beams fall. The archive collapses and the tablets are buried, layer by layer, under dust and time. No one is thinking about the question then. No one is trying to answer it. It simply rests. Until, much later, hands in another age dig into the mound and find the clay again, still holding the marks like closed eyes holding dreams. And now, in the museum, you stand close to the glass, feeling that strange calm, the calm of knowing that something can be kept without effort, simply by time itself. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below. But for now, we stay in the quiet. In the next part, we will watch the tablet's ordinary neighbors, the receipts, the lists, the counted offerings, and discover how the most everyday details can become the gentlest lullaby, a rhythm of numbers and nouns that quiets the mind like rain. For now, let your shoulders sink again. Let your hands rest. Let your thoughts soften around the edges. The archive is cool. The reed taps are slow. The question is asleep in clay, and you are allowed to drift with it. In the museum, the tablet is still behind glass, still resting like a small, sleeping animal that has learned not to fear the light. And now the room feels fuller, as if it carries a faint echo of reed tapping and distant water. If you like, let your breathing become a little slower again, in and out, as though the night itself is smoothing you. You might be surprised by what this tablet's closest companions are. Not crowns, not swords, not dramatic prophecies. Its neighbors are records, quiet lists, receipts, inventories, simple accounts of what came in, what went out, what was offered, what was owed. And there is something deeply soothing about that, because it reminds us that history is not only made by grand events, it is made by ordinary days, days that begin, move gently forward, and end with people putting their tools down. So tonight, we let the ordinary become our lullaby. Imagine again that the glass is gone and you are holding a different tablet now, one with neat lines and repeating patterns. The clay is the same warm brown. The wedge marks are the same patient rhythm, but instead of a question, this tablet is a list, a temple delivery perhaps, a record of offerings for a festival day, a note from a storehouse clerk. It begins the way so many lists begin in any century, with the simple wish to keep the world in order. 50 loaves of bread, 3 sheep, 20 jars of beer. The words are not exactly those words, of course. The signs are older, shaped by another language, another way of thinking. But the feeling is familiar. Someone was counting so that nothing would be lost. Someone was writing so that tomorrow would not feel uncertain. And if you are someone who has ever felt anxious at night, your mind circling, trying to make sure nothing is forgotten, then you know why this is calming. Because a list is a way of saying it is handled. The temple in Sumer was a place of ritual, yes, but it was also a place of logistics. Grain had to be stored, workers had to be fed, wool had to be measured, oil had to be kept in jars that would not leak, dates had to be dried and counted. The temple held the city's steady heartbeat, and the scribes were the quiet hands that kept that heartbeat regular. If you listen closely, only in imagination, you can hear it. The soft scrape of reed on clay, the murmur of a clerk reading a number aloud, the gentle thump of a sack set down, the faint slosh of beer in a jar as it is carried. None of it is loud, none of it is urgent. It is simply life, moving at a human pace. Let's walk slowly into that storehouse. The floor is packed earth, cool beneath bare feet or sandals. The air smells faintly of grain and dust. In the dim light, baskets are stacked along the walls. Large jars, tall as a child, stand in rows like quiet sentinels. Their clay surfaces are smooth, sometimes painted with simple lines. A few are sealed with clay stoppers, marked with cylinder seals rolled across wet clay like tiny signatures. A worker carries in barley, another carries out oil. A supervisor watches, not harshly, but with the calm attention of someone tending a garden. And at a low table near the doorway, the scribe sits. He has a small lump of clay in his hand. He shapes it into a flat oval, smooths the surface with a damp finger. Then he begins. Press, lift, press. The list grows. 50 loaves, 3 sheep, 20 jars. You can almost feel the steadiness of it in your own chest. If you like, you can let your eyelids soften now, even if they stay open. Let them become heavier, as if they are remembering what it feels like to be safe. Because the gentle truth is this: the human mind loves patterns. Patterns tell the nervous system nothing is chasing you. Patterns say you can rest. And these ancient lists are patterns made visible. Sometimes the tablets include more than food. They include names, workers, supervisors, messengers. They include places, storehouse, courtyard, canal gate. They include times, month, day, year name. To a waking mind, that could feel like too much. But tonight, we do not hold the details tightly. We let them be like distant lights on a shoreline. We only keep the rhythm: bread, beer, wool, oil, bread, beer, wool, oil. And the rhythm becomes a kind of soft drum. Do you remember the feeling of rain at night when it is gentle and steady, when each drop seems to say, over and over, "It is okay, it is okay, it is okay"? That is what the list becomes. If you want, imagine the scribe's voice reading it back quietly to confirm. 50 loaves, 3 sheep, 20 jars, no shortage, no shortage. Those 2 words, no shortage, feel like a blanket. They are not only about bread, they are about reassurance, because shortages make people afraid. Shortages make families tense. Shortages make the future feel sharp. But no shortage is the opposite. It is the temple saying, tonight we are cared for. In the museum, standing before the glass, you can feel that reassurance. travel across time like a slow river. Perhaps you can offer it to yourself too. Tonight, you do not need to solve everything. Tonight, you do not need to produce. Tonight, you can be like the tablet, resting behind glass, held gently, allowed to exist without effort. Can you feel the weight of your body where it meets the bed or the chair? That weight is not a problem to fix. It is proof that you are supported. Now, very softly, we let a mild curiosity bloom, only a small one like a night flower opening. Because among these ordinary lists there is something else, a hint that knowledge itself was treated like a precious substance, something measured, stored, and released carefully. In Sumerian stories, the powers of civilization, skills, arts, understandings were sometimes imagined as gifts, as sacred measures that could be held by the gods and granted to humans. The details can be complex, and we will not chase them into a debate. We only take the gentle feeling from it that wisdom was seen as something that flows, and like any flow, it can be guided. If you have ever poured tea, you know this. The teapot does not empty itself all at once. It releases warmth in a steady stream, cup by cup. Perhaps that is why the old question exists. If wisdom is light, why is it not poured freely? But notice how softly the question returns. It does not slam the door, it simply sits down beside the list. 50 loaves, 3 sheep, 20 jars, and 1 small question folded into clay, waiting without impatience. Now we drift upward, out of the storehouse, out of the temple courtyard, into the sky. Because the scribes were not only counting bread and beer, they were also counting time. They watched the moon, they noticed the seasons, they observed the wandering planets, not with telescopes, not with modern charts, but with their own eyes night after night, and letting the heavens teach them patience. Imagine a rooftop in the city. The night is warm. The bricks beneath you still hold a little heat from the day. The air smells of river water and distant smoke. Someone has brought a small lamp, and its flame is shielded so it does not ruin the dark. A scribe sits there with another tablet. This one is not a list of offerings, it is a record of the sky. A bright star appears near the horizon. It moves slowly over weeks, it disappears, it returns. The scribe writes a few marks to note it. Press, lift, press, again the rhythm. And the sky becomes another kind of archive, vast and quiet. If you are listening tonight in a city, perhaps you cannot see many stars, but you can still imagine them, patient behind the glow, like tablets behind glass. If you are listening somewhere quieter, perhaps you can see a few stars through a window. Let them be gentle. Let them be distant enough to feel safe. And now a soft discovery. Nothing shocking, only tender. Maybe you can picture the scribe pausing just once to flex his fingers. A thin film of clay dust coats his skin, and he rubs it away with a damp cloth, slowly, as if washing away worry. Outside, the canal water makes a faint, continuous sound, not a roar, more like someone breathing in the dark. He listens, then returns to his tablet. The wedges appear again, calm and obedient. And somewhere in you, that same calm can appear too. If your eyes are closing, let them close. The story keeps quiet watch. The first writing we have from humanity is often not a poem. It is often a list, and that is beautiful, because it means our earliest urge was not only to sing, it was to remember, to keep track, to care for tomorrow. That is a very human form of love. So when the tablet asks, if the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? It is not only a philosophical question, it is a personal one. It is the question of someone who has learned that remembering matters, and who wonders why remembering would ever be denied. In the next part, we will return to the museum and listen for the whispers hidden in administrative clay, the quiet sighs, the small questions, the hints of a human heart inside the neat wedges. For now, let the list lull you. 50 loaves, 3 sheep, 20 jars of beer, no shortage. Let your forehead smooth, let your shoulders soften, let your hands be still. And if your mind wanders, it can wander back to the rhythm. Press, lift, press, like footsteps returning to a familiar path in the dark. Back in the museum, the night has grown deeper. Outside, the city may still be awake, cars passing like distant waves, lights blinking at intersections. But inside these galleries, everything has slowed to a steadier tempo. The air feels cooled by stone, and the silence has a weight that is gentle rather than heavy. Inhale, as if you're stepping through a quiet doorway. Exhale, as if you're leaving the day's noise on the other side. You stand again in front of the case where the tablet rests. The glass is clean, and the light is soft, aimed so that the wedges cast tiny shadows. Those shadows make the marks feel alive, not in a startling way, but in the way footprints feel alive when you notice them on a beach and realize someone passed by. A museum at night is a kind of shoreline for time. Everything is still, yet everything has arrived from somewhere. And when you look closely at these tablets, at the neat rows, the careful angles, you begin to sense something that doesn't show up in a simple translation. A human breath, not loud, not dramatic, just a small sigh pressed into clay and left there, waiting for someone gentle enough to listen. Many of these tablets were not made to be beautiful. They were made to be useful. And usefulness has its own poetry. Usefulness has the calm insistence of, let's make sure it's remembered correctly. But inside that insistence, the heart sometimes slips through. A scribe might begin with a formal heading, the way you begin a message with a greeting even when you're tired. He might write a date, a place, a name. He might write the name of a temple or an official. He might write, at the top, the name of a god. And this is one of the soft discoveries that can change how the past feels. Sometimes the gods appear in these tablets, not as thunder and lightning, not as voices from the clouds, but as a name written at the top of a page, like a header on a form, like a seal, like a quiet reminder that order is being watched over. A divine name can look in that moment almost administrative, not cold, just steady, like a lighthouse. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? When the question sits beside that image, gods as guardians of a system, you can feel the edges soften. Perhaps hiding is not always cruelty, perhaps it is sometimes caution. Perhaps it is the slow pace of giving, the way a teacher gives a student only what the student can carry. But we won't force any conclusion tonight. We only let the thought drift by like a boat on dark water. The museum lights dim even further as the building settles. Somewhere far away, a door clicks softly. The sound doesn't feel alarming. It feels like reassurance. Someone is awake, keeping watch while you rest. If your eyes are open, let them rest on one simple point, a shadow on the wall, the edge of a blanket. If your eyes are closed, imagine the tablet's warm brown surface and let that color steady you for now. Now imagine the tablet in the case is not the question tablet, not the offerings list, but a letter. Yes, letters. Clay letters. It seems almost impossible at first, the idea of a letter made of earth, but when paper is rare and time is wide, clay can be a kind of envelope. A message can be pressed into it, dried, and carried by hand across a canal, across a field, across a city wall. A letter does not need to be grand to be precious. Sometimes it is simply, I received what you sent, Sometimes it is, "Please send more." Sometimes it is, "I am waiting." And in those quiet lines, the past steps closer, not to startle you, but to sit beside you like an old friend in a dim room. Picture a messenger at dusk. He is walking along a canal path. The water beside him is dark and calm, reflecting the last pale colors of the sky. Reeds whisper as the wind moves through them. In the distance, the temple platform is a darker shape against the horizon, and tiny lamps begin to glow in doorways like fireflies. In his pouch is a small tablet wrapped in cloth. It is warm from his body. It is safe. He arrives at a courtyard. Someone opens a door, and lamplight spills out, making a soft rectangle on the ground. The messenger bows his head and offers the tablet. The receiver takes it carefully, as if taking a small stone that holds a secret. The receiver does not read it immediately. First, he turns it in his hands, feeling the edges, noticing the texture. He recognizes the scribe's style, the way you can recognize someone's handwriting even before you understand the words. Then, slowly, he reads. And what does he find? Not an epic, not a prophecy, just the gentle, ordinary shape of a human relationship. A request made with respect, a gratitude expressed briefly, a small worry contained politely, a promise to repay. The softness comes from the restraint. Even when people were anxious, they often wrote with careful calm, because writing itself creates a boundary around emotion. It says, "This is how much worry I am allowing onto the page." And that boundary can feel comforting to someone trying to sleep, because it suggests you can do the same. If you have a thought that feels too big tonight, you can place it somewhere small. You can fold it into a sentence, a breath, a gentle name, and leave it there. You don't have to carry it across the night. Now let the museum dissolve again, but this time we do not go to the storehouse or the rooftop. We go to a school, a tablet house. The room is simple, packed earth floor, mud brick walls, a doorway opening to bright daylight. Inside, the light is softened by shade. Students sit in rows, young and quiet, holding tablets on their knees. A teacher moves among them, calm and patient, correcting a wedge here, a line there. There is a kind of hush in this place, not because anyone is afraid, but because everyone is concentrating on making the marks clean. Press, lift, press. One student copies a list: bread, beer, wool, oil. Another copies a proverb. Another copies a hymn. And somewhere, someone copies a question, because questions are also part of learning. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? In a school, a question like that would not be shouted. It would be handed over carefully, like a lamp being passed from one person to another. And here is another soft discovery. When knowledge is precious, it is often taught slowly, not to exclude you, but to protect you, not to tease you, but to make sure you can carry it gently, without turning it into a weapon against yourself. Sometimes, when modern minds are tired, we try to swallow everything at once. News, ideas, timelines, endless feeds. We try to hold it all, and the mind becomes tense, like a hand gripping too tightly. But the scribes work differently. They learned one sign at a time, one pattern at a time, one season at a time. They trusted that time itself was a teacher. And perhaps that is the quiet lesson hidden in clay, that wisdom is not always a bright flash. Sometimes it is a slow lamp, lit night after night, until the room is warm enough to rest in. Back in the museum, you can imagine leaning closer to the glass. The tablet's surface is not perfectly smooth. It has tiny cracks, hairline lines from drying, from age, from the long patience of earth. Those cracks do not feel like damage. They feel like the natural texture of time, like laugh lines on a face, like creases in a well-used blanket. If you listen only with imagination, you might hear the sound these marks once made, the soft tap of reed in clay. It is almost like a metronome, but kinder. A metronome can feel strict. This feels like a lullaby made of tiny movements, tap, tap, tap. And now the story offers you a small, harmless suspense, just enough to keep the mind afloat without pulling it into alertness, because not every tablet is only a list. Not every tablet is only a letter. Sometimes, hidden in the archive, there is a tablet that feels like a doorway. A tablet where the scribe, after writing the official lines, adds something small, something that doesn't quite fit the form. A line that sounds like a sigh, a line that sounds like someone asking, quietly, for meaning. Maybe it is a proverb written in the margin. Maybe it is a note to the future. Remember. Maybe it is a question pressed softly, so softly it almost blends into the background. And that is how the question survives, not as a shouted rebellion, as a gentle thread stitched into the cloth of daily life. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? In the next part, we will follow that thread. We will move from the museum's warm light into the desert wind again, and we will let the question expand, not into fear, but into a wide, star-filled calm, where it becomes less of a puzzle and more of a companion. For now, you can stay with the small sighs, the polite requests, the careful gratitude, the steady lists, the quiet students, and you here in your own room allowed to be soft. If this part of the journey reminded you of the way you write your own quiet lists, shopping lists, reminders, notes to yourself, feel free to leave a gentle comment when you're ready. Sometimes naming where we are helps us feel less alone. But you don't have to do anything now. Now is only for resting. Let your breathing slow. Let your shoulders drop. Let your thoughts settle behind an invisible pane of glass, safe and untouched. The clay remembers. And you can let go. The museum holds its breath as the night deepens. If you imagine standing there now, you might notice how the building seems to become softer after midnight, how even the corners feel less sharp, how every display case becomes a small island of warm light surrounded by a gentle sea of shadow. The air is cool and faintly dry with the quiet scent of old paper and stone that has been cleaned 1,000 careful times. Let your own room borrow that feeling. Notice the place where your body meets what supports you. Let the support do its work. You don't need to hold yourself up so tightly tonight. You can be held. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? In the museum, the tablet does not answer. It only waits. It waits the way a river waits, moving but not hurrying. It waits the way starlight waits, already traveling, already arriving, even when you can't see it. So we let the glass fade once more. We step out of the museum and into the desert night, and the first thing you feel is the wind. It is not a harsh wind in this story. It is a steady wind, a patient wind, the kind that doesn't push you, but simply reminds you the world is wide. It moves across the southern plains, brushing the tops of reeds and bending them in unison, like a slow bow in a quiet orchestra. Fine dust rises and settles again, soft as flour. The land between the rivers is dark and open. In the distance you can see the silhouette of a ziggurat, a layered temple tower, standing like a calm mountain built by hands. It does not glow, it does not threaten, it simply holds its shape against the sky. If you listen, you may hear water somewhere, even if you can't see it. A canal runs nearby, and the water has a low, continuous sound like someone breathing in their sleep. In Mesopotamia, water was never only scenery. Water was time. Water was survival. Water was the measure of seasons and the promise of harvest, and perhaps that is why the old question can feel so tender, because knowledge too is like water. It can nourish, it can soothe, it can also overwhelm if it arrives too fast. Imagine for a moment a teacher in a tablet house. He sits with a student under a shaded doorway. The student's hands are small and the reed stylus feels awkward. The teacher does not scold, he does not hurry. He shows one sign, then waits for the student to copy it. Press. Lift. Press. A small pause, like a breath, then the next sign. No one pours the whole river into the student's mouth. That is not kindness, that is drowning. So knowledge arrives in portions, a cup, a bowl, a steady stream. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? Perhaps the question is also asking, why do we receive what we need so slowly? Tonight we do not argue with the question, we simply walk with it. We climb the ziggurat slowly, not for drama, but for the view. The steps are wide and worn, and the brick under your feet is warm from the day. The air cools as you go higher. Somewhere below, the city is quieting. A final call, a door closing, a jar being set down. The sounds are small and far away, like pebbles dropping into a deep well. At the top, there is space to sit. A scribe, or perhaps an older priest who knows the sky, has come here not to command anything, but to watch. Beside him is a small lamp. Its flame is shielded by a clay cover, so it does not ruin the darkness. And the light is just enough to see his hands, just enough to see the surface of a tablet resting on his knees. Above you, the sky is vast. In places without electric light, the stars do not look like decorations. They look like presents. Thousands of points, steady and quiet, and the darker river of the Milky Way spread like pale smoke across the heavens. If you are listening tonight in a bright city, you might not see that many stars, but you can still imagine them patient behind the glow. The watcher points to a bright light near the horizon. Not a star, he says softly, but a wandering one, a planet. It moves differently, it returns differently, it teaches patience differently. The watcher does not claim to own the sky. He simply tracks it, the way you might track your own breath, observing, not forcing. He notes where Venus rose, where it vanished, where it returned. He marks the moon's shape, the days between crescents. He watches Jupiter's calm glow and learns that even great things move slowly. Press, lift, press. The tablet receives these observations the way sand receives footsteps, and in that quiet practice, something in the mind settles, because when you watch the sky, you cannot rush it. You cannot demand the moon to become full early. You cannot pull Venus closer with your hands. You can only notice, and by noticing, you learn a gentle truth. Time will come to you on its own. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? Perhaps knowledge, like the moon, reveals itself in phases, not to tease you, to train your eyes for the dark. The watcher smiles faintly as if he has heard this question before, as if it is older than him, older than the city itself. And he does not answer with thunder. He answers with a gesture. He points to the river. Far below the ziggurat, the Euphrates is a dark ribbon. It glints in places where the moon touches it. It moves without sound from this height, but you know it is moving. You know it is always moving. It has been moving long before this night, and it will move long after. The river, he suggests, does not hide water. It carries water, but it carries it through channels, it carries it into fields, it carries it in a way the land can hold. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? Maybe they do not hide it, maybe they channel it, maybe the work of life is not to rip open the sky and seize everything, but to build canals inside the heart, so what arrives can be received gently. If you feel tired tonight, let that thought be kind. You do not need all answers in one night. You do not need to solve your whole life before morning. You only need enough to soften. Let your breath be your canal. In, slow and cool. Out, warm and releasing, the watcher returns to his tablet. He writes a line that is not a measurement, not a number. It is a phrase, quiet, careful, something like a reminder to himself, the way you might write a note on a scrap of paper and leave it by your bed. Light arrives in steps. He does not know, of course, that centuries later, a person like you will be listening to a story about him. He does not know the museum, the glass, the electric city lights. He only knows this moment, warm brick, cool air, the smell of river mud, and distant smoke, the quiet companionship of stars. And perhaps that is enough. Because maybe the softest wisdom is not a secret at all. Maybe it is simply the practice of being present with what is already here. The wind rises slightly, it brushes your face. It carries a thin veil of dust that smells faintly of earth and reeds. It is the same wind that will one day cover the ruins, smoothing the edges, tucking broken walls beneath sand like a blanket. And the question, still there, begins to change. Not in its words, in its weight. It becomes less of a sharp hook in the mind and more of a floating lantern. It becomes something you can watch from a distance without grabbing. It becomes something that can drift away when you are ready to sleep. Can you feel that change in yourself? If you've been holding a question today about work, about family, about the future, you might try setting it down the way the scribe set down his stylus. You can still care about it. You just don't need to clutch it in the dark. In the museum, the tablet rests behind glass. In the desert, the tablet rests on a lap beneath stars. In your room, your thoughts can rest too. And now we let the night do what it does best. We let it widen. We let the camera of imagination pull back. The ziggurat is a small shape in a vast landscape. The city is a cluster of dark roofs and faint lamps. The rivers are long, slow threads. The sky is immense. The stars hold their places. Venus glows, Jupiter glows. The moon, perhaps, is a thin curve, like a smile. And the wind, always the wind, moves gently across everything, making no demands. In that wide view, the question becomes a whisper, barely louder than the river. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? And the answer, if there is one, is not spoken. It is felt. It feels like patience. It feels like the steady return of planets. It feels like the slow filling of canals. It feels like a lamp that does not flare, but stays. In the next part, we will follow the tablet forward through time, through burial, through rediscovery, through hands that lift it from earth again, and we will notice how silence itself can be a kind of completion, not a loss. For now, let the wind carry the question away from your pillow. Let the river keep moving on your behalf. Let the stars do their quiet work. And if this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. Only when you're ready, only if you want to. Your presence here matters. But for now, there is nothing to do. Only the feet slow drift. Only the soft dark. Only rest. The desert does not rush to erase anything. It only covers slowly the way a blanket covers a sleeping shoulder. After the last reed stylus was set down, after the last jar was sealed, after the last list was read aloud in the temple courtyard, the city of clay and canals began to change its posture. Not with drama in this telling, but with the ordinary softness of time. A wall cracks, a brick loosens. Rain comes one season and the mud swells, then dries again. Wind arrives, patient and unannounced, carrying dust that will one day become part of the ground beneath your feet. And the tablets remain. Some are stored neatly in rooms that were meant to keep them safe. Some are forgotten on shelves. Some fall when beams give way. Some are buried under rubble that feels from a distance, like the city simply exhaling and lying down. If you are listening tonight with a tired mind, you may know this kind of change. It is the way a busy day ends, not with a final shout, but with a gradual dimming. A final light switched off, the body sinking into a softer shape. So let the city sink. Imagine the archive again, the cool room where tablets once dried on shelves. The air is still. Dust floats in thin threads of light. No one is here now. The doorway stands open for a while, then is blocked by a fallen wall, then disappears beneath earth. Wooden beams soften, then crumble. The clay tablets remain, heavier than wood, more patient than cloth. They do not complain about being forgotten. They simply sleep. And this is one of the gentlest truths the past can offer. Silence is not always loss. Sometimes silence is completion. Sometimes a thing becomes quiet because it has finished its work. A list has been made, the bread has been counted, the workers have been fed, the festival has passed, the moon has turned from crescent to full and back again. The question has been placed somewhere safe. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? The tablet does not argue with its own question as the centuries pass. It does not grow louder. It does not demand attention. It rests the way a seed rests in soil, waiting without impatience. Outside, the rivers keep moving. The Euphrates carries water into canals, then back again. The Tigris moves too, darker and swifter. Seasons roll over the land. Reeds grow, reeds die, reeds return. And in the night sky, Venus rises and sets. Jupiter drifts. The moon repeats its calm cycle. The stars hold their places as if they are keeping watch over everything below. If you want, let your own breath join those cycles. In, slow and cool. Out, warm and releasing. Now, without hurrying, we travel forward. Centuries go by, empires rise and fall, languages change the way riverbanks change, new towns grow on old ground, names are forgotten, stories are retold. The tablets stay under the mound, and the mound becomes a soft hill in flat land. People pass by without knowing what sleeps beneath it. They herd animals, they cut reeds, they rest in the shade of a cart. They do not feel the question beneath their feet, and that is okay. The question is not meant to chase anyone. It is meant to rest. And then in another age, hands begin to dig. At first, they find broken pottery, bits of brick, ash. And someone uncovers a flat object the color of earth, and when they brush it clean, lines of wedges appear, orderly as rows in a garden, a clay tablet. It looks asleep. It has been asleep. The person holding it does not know the scribe who made it. They do not know the evening breeze that dried it on a shelf. They only know that they are holding something that carries a mind inside it. And that moment can feel like a soft miracle. The tablet is cleaned, studied, catalogued. It travels into a museum like the one we began in, resting behind glass under warm light. And now, you are here with it. This is another gentle truth. The past does not reach us by force. It reaches us by care. Someone cared enough to lift it from earth without breaking it. Someone cared enough to learn its signs. Someone cared enough to keep it in a room where the light is soft. Care is how time becomes touchable. Imagine, for a moment, a conservator in that museum, long after the doors have closed. The work is quiet, almost like prayer. Cotton gloves, a small lamp, a brush that moves like a feather. The tablet is never hurried. It is lifted with two hands, supported the way you might support a sleeping child, and placed on a padded tray. The conservator checks the air in the case, humidity balanced, light gentle, temperature steady, because clay loves steadiness. Then with a calm breath, They lift away a single speck of dust with the brush, watching it float up like breath and disappear into the lamplight. Even their breathing is slow, as if the tablet teaches it. When the tablet is returned behind glass, the latch clicks softly. That small sound is not a cage closing, it is a promise being kept. The promise is simple: you may rest now. Your words will not be lost to wind. Your question can stay here, held by careful hands, while the night outside keeps moving. If you like, you can borrow that promise for yourself. Place one thought on an imaginary shelf, place another beside it. Let them sit uncrowded until morning. Nothing in you needs to solve anything right now. And the room stays kind. Now we come to a shift that changes the feeling of everything, the move from abandoned to completed. When we imagine ancient places, it is easy to make them tragic. It is easy to say they were lost, destroyed, erased. But tonight, we do not need that sharpness. We can choose a gentler lens. Maybe some silences are not empty. Maybe some endings are not failures. Maybe some things go quiet because they are done. A song ends and the room becomes silent. That silence is not a punishment. It is the resting place of the last note. It is the moment the body realizes it can exhale. Perhaps the tablet's silence is like that. They were not meant to keep shouting forever. They were meant to hold something until it was safe to let go. They held grain counts until the workers were fed. They held calendar notes until the season turned. They held questions until the mind that asked them could rest. And now, thousands of years later, the tablet still holds its question, but notice how it holds it. Not like a trap, not like an argument, like a small lantern stored carefully in clay. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? In the museum's quiet, you can let the question change again. You can let it become less about suspicion and more about tenderness. Why do answers arrive slowly? Why do we only understand certain things when we are ready? Why do some truths appear only after we have slept on them? You have probably experienced this. Sometimes a problem feels impossible at midnight and simpler at morning. Sometimes a conversation becomes gentler when you approach it with rest. Sometimes grief changes shape over years, becoming less sharp, more like a warm ache. Knowledge can be like that, not hidden, but ripening. And if you have been hard on yourself for not knowing something yet, for not having life figured out, let the clay tablet offer you its patient example. It is okay to learn slowly. It is okay to receive light in steps. It is okay to let questions sleep. Back in the gallery, you notice small details you didn't notice before. The tablet's edges are uneven. The surface has tiny cracks like dry earth. The wedges vary slightly because a human hand made them. You can almost imagine the scribe's fingertips smoothing the wet clay before the first mark. And you realize something simple and calming. We are not strangers to these people. We are them in the softest sense. We also keep systems running that we don't fully understand. We also make lists to calm our minds. We also look up at the sky and feel a quiet question rise. We also place worries into objects so we don't have to hold them in our bodies all night. If tonight's story is touching something tender in you, you can let that tenderness be safe. You don't need to analyze it. You can simply feel it the way you feel a warm cup in your hands. Now, let's return to the museum one last time in this part and let the room become even dimmer. The lights fade a little more. The galleries settle. The tablet rests behind glass and it looks truly like it is sleeping. The building feels like a large, calm chest rising and falling. Imagine you whispering to the tablet, not aloud, only in the mind. Thank you for carrying this. And imagine the tablet whispering back without sound. You may put your own questions down now. So, gently, let your shoulders drop. Let your forehead smooth. Let your breath lengthen. If you are listening from a place with wind, through a cracked window, through trees outside, let that wind be your desert wind. Let it move through your thoughts and carry the extra weight away. If you are listening from a place without wind, you can imagine it anyway, a slow, dry breeze moving over dunes, covering ruins with soft sand, not to erase them, but to let them rest. In the next part, we will follow how a record becomes a myth, how a neat list becomes a story told by firelight, and how the distance between fact and legend can be gentle rather than frightening. For now, let this be enough. A tablet sleeping behind glass, a question resting in clay, and you here allowed to sleep too. Somewhere between the museum's glass and the desert's open sky, there is a third place where the past can live. It is not an archive. It is not a ruin. It is a circle of people at the end of an ordinary day, when the last work is finished and the night air turns cool enough to feel kind. If you like, let your body sink a little deeper as we go there. Let your breath soften, in and out, like a slow tide. Imagine a courtyard in an ancient city. Mud brick walls hold the day's warmth. A small lamp glows near a doorway, and its flame trembles gently, protected from wind by a clay shade. Someone has laid a woven mat on the ground. Someone else has poured beer into a cup, and the sound is quiet, like water meeting water. The temple is nearby, but tonight no one is carrying sacks or counting jars. Tonight is for resting. A child leans against an older relative. A worker rubs tired hands together, still dusted with clay. A scribe sits a little apart, shoulders loose, listening more than speaking. Above them, the sky is dark and full, and the stars look close enough to feel like witnesses. And then a story begins. Not a dramatic story, not a story meant to wake the nervous system, but a story meant to settle it. A story told the way a lullaby is told, slowly, warmly, with spaces where the listener can drift. It begins with something familiar, a river, a temple, a list of offerings, a question. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? The storyteller does not say, "Here is the answer." The storyteller does not turn the question into a debate. Instead, the question becomes a gentle hook, a soft pebble dropped into the water of the night. The listeners feel the ripples and their minds lean forward just enough to stay with the voice while their bodies relax. This is how records become legends. A tablet once said, 50 loaves, 3 sheep, 20 jars. Later someone says, and the temple was filled with bread and beer so the city could sleep. A tablet once noted the rising of Venus. Later someone says, and the morning star returned, faithful as a promise, even when people forgot to look. A tablet once carried a quiet complaint, a small sigh, a question pressed into clay. Later someone says, and the gods placed wisdom behind a veil so the heart could learn patience. Do you notice what changes? The facts become softer. The edges blur. The meaning becomes easier to hold, and that is not a failure. It is a kind of human kindness. When memory travels through mouths instead of clay, it becomes warmer, more shaped by love, more shaped by what the listener needs. If you have ever remembered a childhood place, you know this. The details shift, but the feeling stays. The feeling is what the nervous system keeps. So tonight, we let the past be felt more than proved. In the courtyard, the storyteller's voice rises and falls like wind moving through reeds. The story says that long ago, the gods gathered wisdom the way a temple gathers grain. They stored it, they measured it, they shared it carefully. Not because they were cruel, but because wisdom is heavy when it arrives too quickly. Someone in the circle asks very quietly, Why not give it all at once? The storyteller smiles and points to a small bowl of water in the corner of the courtyard. The bowl is for night birds or for washing hands before sleep. The water is still. If you pour the river into that bowl, the storyteller says softly, the bowl breaks. The listeners nod, they understand without needing more. And this is where the story begins to turn towards signs, because when a question cannot be answered in a single sentence, the mind looks for gentler ways to live with it. It looks for patterns. It looks for guidance. It looks for hints in the world that feel safe, not sharp. In Mesopotamia, people read the sky. They watched the flight of birds. They listened to the way oil spread on water. They noticed the way smoke rose from a lamp. They looked at the curves of a sheep's liver after a sacrifice and tried to see the shape of tomorrow. We do not need to decide what is right about any of this tonight. We only need to feel the impulse beneath it, the desire to be held by meaning. When the world feels uncertain, the mind wants a map. When the heart feels tired, it wants a sign that it is not alone. And sometimes the sign is simply this: the world is still moving in rhythm. A bird crosses the moon. A reed bends in wind. A planet returns. If you are listening tonight, can you notice one small sign in your own space? Something neutral, something gentle. The hum of a fan, the rise and fall of your breath, the steady darkness outside your window. Let that be enough. In the courtyard, the storyteller lowers their voice. The story becomes quieter, like a blanket being pulled higher. They say that wisdom is not only stored in temples or tablets, it is stored in attention. Look at the river, they whisper. It teaches without words. The river does teach. It teaches that you can move without rushing. It teaches that you can carry a lot without strain. It teaches that even when the surface is dark, the current is still there, doing its work. And then, as if to make the listeners smile, the storyteller lists offerings the way a scribe would, but in a tone that feels like counting sheep. 50 loaves, 3 sheep, 20 jars. The repetition is hypnotic. The child's head grows heavier on the older shoulder. The worker's hands stop fidgeting. The scribe closes his eyes for a moment, letting the familiar rhythm loosen the tightness behind his forehead. You might notice the same effect in yourself. If your thoughts are racing, try letting the list become a lullaby again. Not because you need bread or beer tonight, but because your mind remembers the comfort of order. 50 loaves, 3 sheep, 20 jars, no shortage. The storyteller pauses, letting silence settle. The pause is not empty, it is full, like a room after music stops. In that pause, the question returns, but quieter now, less demanding. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? The storyteller answers, finally, in the gentlest way. Maybe they do not hide it. Maybe they place it where we will find it when we are ready. Not in a vault, in a season, in a conversation, in a grief that softens. In a morning, when you wake and realize you can breathe again, the listeners do not clap, they do not argue, they simply let the sentence settle into their bodies. The sentence becomes part of the night. And this is how a tablet's question becomes a human practice. To wait without panic, to learn without forcing, to accept that some lights arrive slowly. As the courtyard grows quieter, someone begins to tidy cups and fold the mat. The lamp is lowered, the flame becomes smaller, the stars remain steady. The city sleeps, and somewhere, in a cool room of the temple, clay tablets rest on shelves, holding the sharper details, holding the exact counts, holding the exact words. They do not compete with the story, they simply coexist. Fact and myth side by side, like two hands that both know how to soothe. If you are someone who spends your days inside modern systems, emails, meetings, schedules, numbers on screens, this part of the story might feel familiar. A temple storehouse is not so different from an office spreadsheet, and a scribe's careful wedges are not so different from the way you type a line and press enter. We also measure, we also record, we also try in quiet ways to keep life from slipping through our fingers. The difference is that the ancient night offered more darkness, more space, more permission to pause. So imagine, for a moment, that you step away from your own busy day the way the worker steps away from the jars. Imagine setting your phone down like a stylus being placed on the table. Imagine your thoughts becoming little tablets on a shelf, one labeled tomorrow, one labeled next week, one labeled someday. They can wait there, quietly, without you. In the courtyard, the storyteller notices someone's face tighten just a little, the way faces tighten when the mind starts to worry, so they slow down even more. They describe the river's sound again, lower this time, and they invite everyone to listen to it as if it is a lullaby. The river does not promise answers. It only promises continuity. A breeze passes through the courtyard. It carries the scent of damp earth and reeds. The lamp flame leans, then steadies. Somewhere in the darkness, a night bird calls once, then goes silent. The call is not lonely. It is simply a sign that life is awake in small pockets, keeping quiet watch. "Can you hear it?" the storyteller asks, softly, not demanding a reply. Even the smallest sound knows when to rest. And the listeners, one by one, begin to drift. Not away from the story, but deeper into it, the way you drift into a warm bath, still aware, but no longer tense. In the next part, we will return to the museum again and watch the way distance changes a voice, how the voice of clay becomes far, and how that farness can feel peaceful rather than lonely. We will let silence become a friend. For now, you can stay in the courtyard. Hear the low murmur of night, feel the warmth in the bricks, see the lamp's small glow. And if tonight's story is slowly loosening you, let it. Don't force sleep. Let sleep come the way Venus comes, quietly, faithfully, when it is time. Somewhere between the courtyard story and the museum glass, there is a kind of distance that begins to feel gentle. It is the distance of a voice heard through a wall, not because you are shut out, but because the house is quiet and the voice is meant to lull you. It is the distance of waves at night when you cannot see the ocean, yet you know it is there, breathing in long, slow lines. In the museum, the tablet rests where it always rests, under a warm light that never flickers. But the longer you stand near it, the more you notice something almost tender. The tablet does not insist on being understood. It does not demand that you translate every wedge and sharpen your mind into a tool. It simply offers its presence, like an old photograph on a shelf. You can glance at it and feel the past without forcing the details into place. If you are tired tonight, that is a gift, because there is a kind of knowing that comes from letting go of the need to know everything. There is a kind of peace that arrives when you allow the unanswered parts to stay unanswered, like closed doors in a hallway you do not need to walk down. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? The question is still here, and yet it feels farther away now, as if it has moved from your forehead into the wide air above your bed. It is no longer a hook. It is a star, distant, steady, not asking you to chase it. In this part of our journey, we do something very simple. We listen to the quiet after the record. We listen to the space where a city's paperwork ends and the night begins. We listen to the way silence can be full. Imagine, again, the museum at closing time. The last visitor steps out. A guard walks a slow circle through the galleries, shoes soft on the floor, keys faintly clinking. It's dim in stages, not all at once, so nothing feels abrupt. A door closes, then another. The air changes. It becomes the air of a sleeping building. And in that sleeping building, the tablet remains the same size, the same color, the same patient weight. If you could place your ear to the glass, you would not hear anything. No heartbeat, no whisper, only your own breath reflected back. It is strange, perhaps, to feel comfort in that. But comfort lives there, in the absence of demands, in the permission to stop. Now let the museum dissolve into the desert again, because the desert is where silence has always been practiced. Night in the southern plains is not empty. It is layered. There is wind, faint and dry, stroking the tops of dunes. There is the occasional call of a bird. There is the subtle change of temperature, as if the world is exhaling heat into the stars. Long ago, people listened to those small signs the way you might listen to your own body. Not to panic, not to diagnose, but to become intimate with the rhythm of life. A bird's flight could be a message. A ripple in oil could be a hint. A cloud could be a warning, or a blessing, or simply a cloud. Tonight, we take that impulse and make it softer. We do not need omens, we do not need certainty. We only need to notice the gentle, ordinary signs that say, you are still here, and you are safe enough to rest. Can you hear something small where you are? Maybe the hum of a refrigerator, maybe the distant hush of traffic, maybe the soft shift of your sheets when you breathe. Let that sound be your sign, not a prophecy, just a quiet companion. In the ancient city, a person might have stepped outside and watched the way smoke rose from a cooking fire. If it went straight up, the air was calm. If it bent, the wind was changing. They did not argue with it, they simply adjusted. They moved a lamp, they closed a door, they wrapped a shawl tighter. There is wisdom in that kind of simplicity. And maybe that is what the clay question was always pointing toward beneath its surface. Not a puzzle to solve, but a way to live with mystery without fear. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? Maybe wisdom is not hidden like treasure. Maybe it is hidden like seeds, not to keep them from you, but to keep them from being scorched. A seed placed in sunlight too early dries out. A seed placed in soil waits, dark and quiet, until the season is kind enough to let it open. The past is full of seeds like that, small truths resting under layers of time, and you do not have to dig up every seed tonight. You can let some of them remain in the ground doing their slow work. In the museum, you look again at the tablet, and you notice the tiny cracks. They are not failures. They are the clay's way of settling. They are the record of drying, of cooling, of becoming stable. Your own life has cracks like that, not in a frightening sense, but in a human sense. Little lines where experience has settled, places where you learned something by living through it, not by being told. If you've ever felt that your worries have carved lines into you, let this be a softer reframe. Those lines can also be proof that you have survived seasons. Proof that you have cooled, dried, steadied. Proof that you have become more real. Now we return to the most calming idea of all, the one we touched earlier and can hold more fully now. Silence as completion. When a tablet was finished, the scribe did not keep pressing forever. He stopped. He set the stylus down. He allowed the clay to rest. When a list was read and confirmed, the storehouse clerk did not keep counting all night. He closed the ledger, he went home, he ate, he slept. When Venus vanished from the horizon, the sky watcher did not chase it into the darkness. He waited for its return. There is a beauty in that restraint, a permission to end If your mind has been looping tonight, replaying a conversation, rechecking a decision, revisiting a worry, you can borrow that ancient restraint, you can close the ledger. You can set the stylus down, you can let the question sleep. Try it now, gently. Imagine placing your day into a small clay bowl, not to trap it, but to hold it. Then imagine sliding that bowl onto a shelf in a cool room. The room is safe, the shelf is steady. You can come back tomorrow if you need to, but you do not need to carry it into your dreams. In the desert, the wind covers footprints, not to erase your existence, but to smooth the path for the next day. In the museum, the glass protects the tablet. Not to separate it from you, but to let it rest without being touched. In your room, the darkness protects you. Not to hide you, but to give your nervous system a place to soften. And now a soft drift towards something even quieter. Imagine the archive once more. After the city has changed and the doorway has been buried, the tablets are in darkness. No voices reach them, no hands reach them. They are simply there. At first, that might feel lonely, but sit with it for a moment and the loneliness fades into something else, a sense of completion, like a book closed after the last page. The tablets do not need an audience to exist. They do not need applause. They do not need constant attention. They are content to be held by Earth. There is a lesson in that for modern life, which so often asks you to be visible, to perform, to respond. What if you did not have to be available tonight? What if you could be like a tablet behind glass, or like a seed in soil, or like a river moving in the dark, present but not demanded? If tonight's story has given you even a small pocket of quiet, you can keep it. You can protect it. Maybe outside the museum, a thin winter rain is falling, tapping the sidewalk with a gentle, regular patience. A streetlight turns each drop into a soft thread of gold. Inside, the galleries do not react. They simply hold their hush. The guard steps slow, then stop, as if he is listening too. For a moment, everything feels synchronized, rain, breath, and the quiet weight of clay, until even your thoughts begin to move more slowly. Night teaches you to rest very gently. You can let it be your own little museum after hours, where the lights are low and nothing asks you to hurry. And still, we keep a tiny thread of curiosity, because a sleep story works best when the mind is gently guided, not abruptly turned off. So here is the thread. Sometimes, among the most administrative tablets, among the bread and beer and wool, there are lines that look almost like a confession. Not dramatic, just human. A phrase about weariness, a note about waiting, a quiet mention of a dream. We won't read it yet, we won't translate it sharply. We will only approach it the way you approach the edge of sleep, slowly, without grabbing. In the next part, we will step closer to that hidden tenderness, the way even a record can carry longing. And we will let that longing become a bridge between then and now, soft enough to hold you as you drift. For now, let the distance be kind. Let the past stay a little far, like a star. Let the present be close, like breath. Let your body sink. Let your thoughts loosen. And if the question returns, let it float above you, harmless, quiet, wise in its own way. In the museum, your reflection in the glass is faint now, softened by shadow. The tablet rests exactly where it rested before, as if it has never moved, as if time has been holding it in the same gentle hands all along. And yet, as you stand near it, you begin to sense something else, something that is not written in the wedges alone, a mood, a human temperature. Because the archive was never only numbers, it was never only bread and beer. Between the rows of counted offerings and the neat headers of temple accounts, there were people trying to live ordinary lives, carrying ordinary feelings and doing their best to keep those feelings from spilling. Tonight, we step toward that hidden tenderness, not to stir sadness, not to create drama, only to remember that the past was made of hearts as much as it was made of clay. If you like, take one slow breath in and let it out as though you're blowing gently on a candle flame, watching it bend but not go out. Now imagine that somewhere in this museum, maybe in a drawer behind the exhibit, maybe in another case in a darker room, there is a small tablet that is not a list at all. It is a letter, a message made of earth, wrapped in cloth, carried by a person who walked at a human pace along canal paths. It is the kind of object that feels almost unbelievable until you realize that people have always wanted the same thing, to reach one another across distance. The letter is small enough to fit in one hand. Its surface is smoother than the ledger tablets because the writer wanted the marks to be clear. There is care in the spacing, care in the line breaks. Even if the words are ancient, the intention is familiar. Someone is speaking to someone else. Who is the sender? A merchant, a temple worker, a young scribe writing on behalf of an older official? We don't need to decide. We only need to feel the shape of the moment. Where is the sender? In a city of reeds and brick where lamplight flickers in courtyards, when is the sender writing? Perhaps after a long day, when hands are tired and the air is cooling. What is being sent? Not a treasure, not a weapon, only words. Why send them? Because the heart prefers connection to silence. And how do they send them? By pressing wedges into clay, trusting the earth to carry meaning. The letter begins politely, the way letters often begin when you want to keep the world steady. It might say, "To my brother," or "To my friend," or "To the one who keeps the storehouse." And then, after the formal opening, something human slips in quietly, almost as if the writer is embarrassed by their own softness. A line like, "I have not heard from you," or "I'm waiting," or "Your last message warmed my house." In our story, the writer does not wail. They do not accuse. They do not throw their feeling into the night. They place it into clay like a small lamp placed on a shelf. Steady, contained, meant to glow without burning anything. Imagine the writer's hands. They have clay dust in the lines of their fingers. Their nails are short, practical. They smooth the tablet surface with a damp thumb, then begin, press, lift, press. As the marks appear, the writer's breathing slows. Writing becomes a way of regulating the body, a way of making emotion measurable, manageable, safe. Perhaps that is why these tablets feel so calming now, because they show us that even long ago, people practiced the art of holding themselves gently. In the museum, you are listening to a story about a letter, and you might notice something simple. Your own body is doing the same thing. Your breath is becoming steadier. Your shoulders are dropping. Your mind, instead of running, is walking. Now let's follow the letter. It is wrapped in cloth and placed in a pouch. A messenger takes it. The messenger is not heroic. He is simply reliable. He walks along the canal at dusk. The water beside him is dark, reflecting a few early stars. Reeds whisper as the wind moves through them. Somewhere in the distance, frogs make small sounds and then stop again, as if listening. The messenger's footsteps are soft on the path. Dust rises and settles. He passes a field where irrigation channels shine like thin ribbons. He passes a date palm, its leaves shifting like slow hands. He passes a sleeping dog that lifts its head, then lays it back down. Everything in this night is unhurried. At last he arrives at a courtyard. A lamp burns near the doorway, and its light spills onto the ground in a warm rectangle. Someone opens the door. The messenger bows and offers the small tablet. The receiver takes it with both hands. There is a pause before reading, because even in ancient times people knew that words deserve a moment of quiet. The receiver sits. They rest the tablet on their knees. They run a finger lightly along the edge, feeling the dried clay. They recognize the style of the wedges, as you might recognize someone's handwriting, and feel a small tenderness before you even know what the message says. Then they read. And as they read, their face softens. Maybe the letter is simple. A request for more wool. A reminder about barley. A note about a delayed shipment. But mixed into the practical lines is a thread of warmth. A phrase like, "May you be well." A phrase like, "May your house be quiet." A phrase like, "I remember you." You and I live in a world where messages arrive instantly, glowing on screens, appearing with a vibration or a ping. That speed can be useful, but it can also keep the mind alert. Ancient letters were slower. They traveled with footsteps. They arrived with dusk. They asked the receiver to sit down and breathe. There is something restorative in imagining that slowness. So if your day has been full of fast messages, let this letter teach you a different tempo. A message that takes time is a message that already contains patience. While the letter is traveling, the city itself is traveling too into night. Roofs grow darker, cooking smoke thins. A last bowl is rinsed, water poured into the canal. Somewhere a flute plays 2 quiet notes, then stops. A child yawns, a dog circles once and lies down. If you're awake right now, you can do the same. Loosen your brow, soften your eyes, let your breath lengthen as if you're arriving home. Nothing else is required of you tonight. Now, we turn back toward the museum again, and we notice the quiet miracle. This letter still exists. It crossed not only a canal path, but centuries. It crossed the collapse of roofs and the shifting of empires. It crossed the soft covering of sand. It crossed the careful brushing of archaeologists and the calm work of conservators. And now it rests under glass, lit like a small ember in a dark room. If you like, imagine the letter's glow meeting your own tired mind, not to wake you, but to warm you. If tonight's story reminded you of someone you haven't heard from, someone you love quietly, someone you miss gently, you don't need to fix that feeling right now. You don't need to turn it into a plan at midnight. You can simply acknowledge it, the way the writer acknowledged it, with care. A feeling can be real without becoming loud. And perhaps that is the softest bridge between then and now. The people of Sumer maintained systems they did not fully understand, just as we do. They counted, recorded, organized, and hoped. And they looked up at the sky and wondered why wisdom came in portions. They wrote lists to calm uncertainty. They wrote letters to keep connection alive. We are them. And that sameness is not frightening. It is comforting. It means your feelings are not strange. They are human, ancient, familiar. Here, no one rests alone. Now, for a moment, let the letter become even quieter. Imagine the receiver, after reading, sets the tablet down on a shelf in their house. The shelf holds other tablets, receipts, notes, practice lines. The lamp beside it flickers gently. Outside, the courtyard is quiet. A faint wind moves through palm leaves. The receiver looks at the tablet once more, then exhales as if something inside them has softened. They do not write back immediately. They let the message settle. They let gratitude arrive slowly, like the moon rising. And in that pause, the question returns, but now it is wrapped in something warmer. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? Perhaps because knowledge is not only information, perhaps it is also timing. Perhaps it is the moment a letter arrives when a person is ready to receive it. Perhaps wisdom is not a door flung open, but a lamp turned on gently, so the eyes can adjust. If you are listening tonight, I wonder, is there a small light near you? A bedside lamp, a street light through curtains, the glow of a clock? If so, let it be gentle. Let it be your lamp of the letter, steady, calm, not asking anything of you. We don't need to chase the answer. We only need to feel the warmth of connection moving through time. In the next part, we will step into the temple again, into the place where knowledge was stored, measured, and shared. And we will find a twist that is soft and beautiful. The idea that hiding can sometimes be another name for protecting, the way you protect a flame from wind. For now, let the letter rest. Let the messenger's footsteps fade, let the canal water keep its quiet sound, and let your own mind, so busy all day, be allowed to receive something slow, something kind, something that doesn't demand a reply. The museum feels almost like a living thing now, not alive in a noisy way, but alive the way a quiet house feels alive when everyone is asleep. A soft hum in the walls, a steady, careful temperature. A sense that the building is holding something precious without squeezing it. If you are listening with heavy eyes, let them be heavy. If your thoughts are still wandering, let them wander more slowly, like leaves drifting on dark water. Tonight, we return to the temple, to the place that kept the city's memory in ordered rooms, not because we want to solve the question with force, but because the temple offers a gentler way to understand what hidden might mean. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? In the stories people told beneath lamps, hiding could sound like a riddle. But in the daily life of the temple, hiding could look like something simpler, protecting. Imagine the temple again, not as a dramatic fortress, but as a calm center. Mud brick walls, warm in the late sun, steps worn by feet that came and went for years, the courtyard where workers carried barley sacks and jars of oil, the shaded rooms where scribes wrote quietly, the storehouse where lists were checked and rechecked until worry softened into order. Now imagine a doorway deeper inside. It is not a door with iron locks, it is a door with habits, a door with rules, a door with a certain kind of silence on the other side. The doorway leads to a room where the tablets are stored, an archive inside the archive. The air here is cooler, the light is low, dust floats in the beam of a lamp. Shelves line the walls, holding clay tablets stacked like small sleeping bricks. Some are sealed in clay envelopes. Some are labeled with short summaries like whispers, grain, wool, payments, training, hymns, stars. A scribe enters this room slowly. He carries no urgency. He carries a lamp, and the lamp's flame moves gently with each step. He pauses because even his footsteps feel too loud here. He waits until the flame steadies, then continues, careful not to bump the shelves. In this room, knowledge has weight, not the weight of pride, but the weight of responsibility. A recipe for beer matters because it feeds workers and warms evenings. A list of land boundaries matters because it keeps neighbors from fighting. A calendar of moons matters because it guides planting and harvesting. A ritual text matters because it gathers a city into shared quiet. When something matters, it is not always left out in the open, not because it is forbidden, but because it is vulnerable. If you have ever wrapped a fragile object in cloth, you understand. You don't wrap it to keep it from yourself. You wrap it to keep it safe from breaking. So perhaps the question can be held in that softer way. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? Maybe wisdom is wrapped. Maybe it is placed behind a door, not to tease, but to protect the lamp from wind. In the archive room, a teacher meets a student. The student is young, but the exact age does not matter. What matters is the feeling, a mind that wants to learn, and a body that is still learning patience. The student holds a reed, stylus too tightly. Their shoulders are tense. Their breath is shallow because they want to do well. The teacher is older, their hands are calm, their voice is low. They do not flood the student with everything at once. They choose one tablet from the shelf and bring it down carefully, like bringing down a bowl from a high cupboard. "Start here," the teacher says softly. The tablet is simple, a short list, a few signs, a small pattern: press, lift, press. The student copies, the student makes mistakes, the teacher corrects gently, guiding the reed tip, showing how a wedge can be deeper or lighter. The lesson is not only writing, it is breathing. It is learning to move slowly. And here, quietly, is the soft twist we were approaching. Perhaps knowledge is hidden because it is meant to be received with a steady nervous system. Not because the gods are cruel, because the mind is delicate. A mind that is overwhelmed becomes sharp, it becomes fearful, it becomes quick to judge itself, it becomes quick to hurt others. A mind that is calm can hold more without breaking. In the temple, hiding can simply mean waiting until the student's hands are gentle. Tonight, you can apply that to yourself. If there is something you do not know yet, it does not mean you are locked out. It may only mean you are still growing the quiet strength to carry it. The teacher returns the tablet to the shelf. The student watches with care, learning that respect is part of learning. The lamp flame trembles once, then steadies again. Outside, the night sky deepens. On the rooftop, someone watches Venus. In the courtyard, someone finishes a list of offerings. In a home, someone reads a letter and feels their chest soften. All of it is knowledge arriving in portions like water poured into cups. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? In some Sumerian stories, people spoke of sacred patterns of civilization, ways of doing things, ways of ordering life that belonged first to the divine world and were given to humans. The details are many, and we do not need to carry them all tonight. We only need the feeling. Wisdom was treated like a set of gentle tools, distributed carefully, not dumped all at once. A tool can build a house. A tool can also cut a hand, so the hand must learn first. Back in the archive room, the teacher opens a clay envelope. Inside is a tablet that looks more important, not because it shines, but because the writing is tighter, the margins cleaner. The student leans forward, curious. The teacher does not forbid the curiosity, they simply slow it down. "Not yet," the teacher says. And the words are not harsh, they are kind. They sound like someone pulling a blanket up, not like someone pushing a child away. Not yet. Two words that can feel painful in daylight, but soothing at night, because not yet means the future still exists. Not yet means there is time. Not yet means you do not have to rush. If you are listening tonight with a problem you cannot solve, you can whisper the same phrase to yourself. Not yet, not tonight, tomorrow can hold it. The teacher places the sealed tablet back on the shelf. The student nods, and for a moment, the student's shoulders drop. The student realizes that learning is not a race, it is a river. The lamp's light falls across the shelves, turning each tablet into a small rectangle of warmth. In that warm light, the clay question returns again, as if it has been following us from room to room. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? And now, without answering, we can see how hiding might be another word for holding. Holding knowledge, holding timing, holding the student, holding the city, holding the fragile threads of order so they do not snap. If you like, notice your own hands right now. Are they clenched? Are they holding something invisible? Let them loosen. Let your fingers rest the way the teacher's fingers rest, calm and open. In the museum, the glass is a kind of holding too. It is not a barrier of rejection. It is a blanket of protection. In the desert, sand is a kind of holding too. It covers ruins gently, preserving what would have crumbled in open air. In the mind, sleep is a kind of holding too. It tucks thoughts into deeper rooms so the waking self can rest. So perhaps when wisdom seems hidden, it is sometimes simply sleeping. Not gone, not denied, sleeping. And that brings us to a small, quiet suspense for the next part. Because among the tablets in the deepest shelves, there are ones that are not lists, not letters, not sky notes. There are tablets that feel like instruction, like guidance for how to be human. Proverbs and lines meant to be remembered, repeated, carried. They are the kind of wisdom you might whisper to a child before sleep, or to yourself in the middle of a hard season. In the next part, we will take one of those tablets down from the shelf, and we will listen to its voice, not as a lecture, as a lullaby. For now, stay in the archive room, feel the cool air, see the lamp's warm halo, hear the almost silent tap of reed in clay. If you want to interact, only gently, you can answer this in your own mind. Where are you listening from tonight? And what is the quietest sound near you right now? No pressure to type, no pressure to explain, just a soft noticing. And if you can hear nothing at all, then let that nothing be your gift. Let it be the kind of silence that means the day has finished its work. Not yet, says the teacher. Not tonight, says the lamp. Not now, says the stars. Now is for resting. Outside the temple, the canal reflects a thin slice of moon. A frog calls once, and then seems to listen to its own echo. A woman in a nearby house folds a cloth slow and careful and lays it beside a sleeping child. In the museum's present far away, a night guard pauses by the case, hands clasped behind his back, and feels the same quiet without knowing why. He does not read the wedges. He only senses the steadiness like warmth held inside stone. Somewhere you may feel it too, steadiness spreading from your chest to your shoulders, down your arms into your palms. Inhale as if drawing that steadiness in. Exhale as if letting it settle like dust in lamplight. And stay there for you. The archive room is still cool and the lamp is still small. Its flame does not roar. It does not flare. It simply holds an oval of light on the shelves, touching the edges of clay tablets, the way moonlight touches the rim of a cup. In this room, everything feels measured. Not in a strict way, but in a gentle way, as if time itself has learned to speak softly. The teacher stands before the shelves and considers the student for a moment. Not with judgment, with care, because there is a certain kind of knowledge that can be written as a list, and there is another kind that can only be carried as a feeling. The first kind keeps the storehouse full. The second kind keeps the heart from becoming too hard. Tonight, we take down one of the tablets that holds the second kind. It is smaller than the others. Its lines are shorter. The wedges are spaced with a little more air between them, as if the writer knew that the mind needs room to breathe. This is not a receipt. It is a proverb, a short sentence meant to be remembered, a quiet instruction meant to be repeated. Something that can travel from mouth to mouth, from teacher to student, from parent to child, without needing the whole archive to survive. The teacher lifts the tablet with both hands and sets it on the low table. The student leans forward. The reed stylus is set aside. For now there is no pressing and lifting, no copying. There is only listening. If you are listening with heavy eyes, this is a good moment to let them rest. If they close, let them close. If they stay open, let them soften at the edges. The teacher reads the proverb in a low voice, and even if we do not know the exact words, we can feel what it does inside the body. It is like a pebble placed in the palm, small, cool, real. A proverb does not try to explain the whole universe. It does not demand that the listener solve life in one night. It offers one gentle angle, one small shift, one way to loosen the knot. The teacher pauses after reading, letting the silence hold the line. Then the teacher speaks again, not translating word for word, but offering the meaning the way one offers warm water. "Don't carry more than you need," the teacher says, softly. "What you cannot change tonight, set down." The student nods and something in the student's shoulders drops. Not because the student is suddenly wiser, but because the sentence gives permission. Permission is one of the greatest gifts a teacher can give, and if you have been carrying too much today, you can accept that permission too. What you cannot change tonight, set down. In the temple city, there were many reasons for worry. The river could rise too high or too low. A shipment could arrive late. A worker could fall ill. A jar could crack and spill oil onto the ground. Even in an ancient world without emails and deadlines, there were still uncertainties, still small failures, still days when the mind wanted to replay everything. So the proverbs were not decoration, they were medicine. Not medicine that knocks you out, but medicine that softens the edges of thought and lets the body return to its own rhythm. The teacher lifts another tablet from the shelf. This one is older, its surface slightly rougher, the wedges a little less precise, like handwriting from a tired day. The teacher reads, "Be gentle in your words," the teacher says, and the student's eyes widen just slightly, as if surprised that such a thought could survive in clay. Be gentle in your words. It is simple, it is ordinary, it is the kind of wisdom we still need, because words can be tools, and tools can build or cut. A gentle word is a tool that builds. In the museum centuries later, those wedges are still there. The clay still holds the instruction as if it never aged. Be gentle in your words. If you are listening tonight with a memory that stings, something you said, something someone said to you, let the proverb be a quiet balm. Not a command, not a lesson with sharp corners, just a soft reminder. Tomorrow you can choose gentleness. Tonight you can rest. The teacher places the tablet down and looks at the student. The student's hands are open now, palms relaxed, no longer gripping the stylus as if life depends on it. The lamp flame seems to breathe. Outside, the city is quieter. Somewhere a dog sighs and settles. Somewhere a reed mat is rolled up. Somewhere a last lamp is shaded for sleep. The teacher takes down one more proverb tablet, and this one feels like it was made for night time. The teacher reads slowly, leaving space between phrases, as if guiding the student's breath. Let the day end, the teacher says. A closed door can be kind. A closed door can be kind. In your own life you have closed doors. You have conversations that ended. You have chapters that finished. You have seasons that passed. Sometimes in the bright part of the day, you might wish those doors were still open because open doors feel like possibility. But at night, closed doors can feel like safety. They keep out wind, they keep out noise, they keep the room warm enough for sleep. A closed door can be kind. If you are listening from a home where you can hear the faint sounds of the world outside, imagine closing an inner door now, not in fear, in care. A door that says, not tonight, not now. Rest. The student asks a question in a voice that is smaller than a whisper. What about the questions we can't answer? The teacher smiles, not amused but tender. The teacher taps the table once, gently, the way one taps a pillow to fluff it. The questions are like tablets, the teacher says. They can rest on a shelf. They don't need to sit on your chest. In that moment, the student's breath deepens and perhaps yours can too. In and out. The teacher walks to the shelves and returns with the question tablet, the one we began with, the one that carries its small, ancient wonder. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? The teacher does not try to solve it. The teacher sets it beside the proverb tablets, and something about that placement changes the feeling. The question is no longer alone. It sits among gentle sentences like a restless child sitting among calm elders. And perhaps that is the secret of living with mystery. You don't answer every question. You surround the question with steadiness, a few good habits, a few kind words, a few small truths that the body can hold. Set down what you cannot change tonight. Be gentle in your words. A closed door can be kind. In the museum, you can imagine walking from case to case, reading small labels, not to learn everything, but to let your mind drift in a slow stream. Your attention does not have to be sharp. It can be soft, like fingers tracing the edge of a blanket. If you like, answer this quietly in your own mind. What is one gentle sentence you wish someone had told you today? It does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be poetic. It can be as simple as, "You did enough," or "You can rest," or "Tomorrow is allowed." If tonight's story brought you calm, you can leave a gentle comment for yourself when you're ready. A single sentence is enough. Sometimes writing it down is like pressing it into clay. It gives it a safe place to stay. And if sleep has been difficult lately, you can treat this as a rehearsal. Nothing to achieve, nothing to fix. Just notice the air entering, notice it leaving. Like the river, you are allowed to continue without effort all through the night. Now the teacher invites the student to copy just one proverb, not a dozen, not a whole tablet house worth. Just one line, slowly with plenty of pauses. The student shapes a small lump of clay, smooths it and begins. Press, lift, press. The marks appear one by one. The student's breathing stays steady. Mistakes are corrected softly. There is no rush. The teacher watches the student's hands, not to judge, but to help them learn gentleness. And as the student copies, the proverb becomes embodied. It moves from the teacher's voice into the student's muscles, into the rhythm of the wrist, into the way the shoulders rest. This is how wisdom becomes real, not as a thought, but as a practice. In your own night, you can practice too, not by thinking harder, by breathing, by loosening your jaw, by letting your tongue rest, by allowing your eyes to be heavy, by letting the story carry the question for you. The lamp burns lower now. The teacher returns the tablets to the shelf, one by one, each placed carefully, each given a home. The student watches the careful placing and learns another quiet lesson. Order can be soothing when it is done with love. Outside, wind moves through reeds and makes a sound like soft brushing. The canal water continues, steady and dark. Venus is somewhere above the rooftops, faithful in its slow return. And the question, still present, feels lighter because it has been placed among gentle things. In the next part, we will return to the museum for the last time tonight. We will let the lights dim fully. We will let the tablet sleep behind glass. And we will guide your body slowly and kindly into the deepest quiet, where you don't need answers, only rest. For now, stay with the proverbs like quiet stones in the palm. Set down what you cannot change tonight. Be gentle in your words. A closed door can be kind. The night has walked a long way with you. If you are still awake, it is okay. There is no deadline inside this story. There is no test at the end, no moment where you have to prove you understood. The past has been moving slowly beside you, like a river that does not mind how long it takes to reach the sea. In the museum, the galleries are almost dark now. Only a few lamps remain, set low like candles in a quiet chapel. The glass cases glow softly, and every object inside them looks as if it has finally found a place to rest. You stand before the clay tablet one last time. It is small, it is ordinary, It is earth-shaped by human hands, and yet it carries so much. The steady work of scribes, the calm rhythm of lists, the patient watching of stars, the warmth of letters that traveled by footsteps. There's proverbs that sounded like kind instructions in a cool archive room. And it carries that gentle question still sleeping inside its wedges. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? Tonight, you do not have to answer it. Tonight you can place it back behind glass. Imagine it clearly. The tablet on its padded stand, the amber light above it, the faint shadow of wedge marks like tiny ripples. Imagine the glass as a blanket, not a barrier. A protective layer that says, this can stay here, safe and untouched while you go home to your own softness, because you have your own day to set down. So let's do it slowly, as if we're placing tablets onto shelves. First, relax your forehead. Let the skin smooth. If your eyebrows are pulled together, let them drift apart. Let the space between them widen the way a doorway widens when someone opens it gently. Now relax your eyes. Let them stop searching. Let them rest in their sockets the way stones rest on a riverbed. If they want to close, let them close halfway, then a little more, like curtains lowering in a room that feels safe. Relax your jaw. Let your teeth part just a little. Let your tongue rest like a small boat on calm water. Relax your shoulders. Let them drop even a fraction, like a coat sliding off a chair. Let the softness move down your arms. Feel your elbows, your forearms, your wrists. Let them be heavy. Let gravity take over the way it always has, the way it always will. Relax your hands. If your fingers are curled, let them uncurl. If your palms are tight, let them soften. You don't need to grip anything tonight. Not even your own thoughts. Let the calm travel through your chest and belly. Notice the rise and fall of breathing there, the simplest motion in the world. You don't need to control it perfectly. You can simply accompany it like walking beside a friend. Now let your legs soften. Feel your thighs, your knees, your calves. Let any small tension drain downward as if it is flowing through canals back to the river. Finally, let your feet rest. Your toes don't have to hold on. Your feet can become warm and quiet, like sand after the last footprint is smoothed. And now, notice your breathing. Inhale slowly, as if you're drawing in the warm light of the museum. Exhale slowly, as if you're letting that light settle into your chest, heavy and calm, like sand settling after wind. If a thought arrives, you don't have to chase it. You can treat it like a visitor in a gallery. You can nod to it, then let it keep walking. Maybe the thought is about work, a message you didn't send, a decision you haven't made, a meeting waiting tomorrow. Set it down like a clay tablet on a shelf. Tomorrow. Maybe the thought is about family, someone you miss, someone you worry about, something you wish you could fix. Set it down like a tablet too. Love. Maybe the thought is about you, about whether you're doing enough, whether you're behind, whether time is moving too fast. Set it down gently. Being human. In the museum, nothing is ashamed of being old. Nothing is ashamed of having cracks. The clay has hairline lines from drying, and those lines are part of its truth. They don't ruin it, they make it real. You can be real too. And here is a quiet reflection to carry. Light as a feather. The people of the rivers lived inside systems they did not fully understand, and still they made bread, and still they watched the stars, and still they wrote letters, and still they loved. Sometimes they held knowledge like a lamp, sometimes like a seed, sometimes like water in a jar. They did not always know the ending of their own story, yet their days were still worth living. your day was worth living too, even if it felt messy, even if you did not finish everything. A day does not need to be perfect to be complete. Sometimes completion is simply the moment you stop trying to push it further. And now the museum begins to close itself, not with loud announcements, with a gradual dimming. A guard walks the hallway, slow and unhurried. A door clicks softly, lights fade in stages, the air cools by 1 quiet degree. The building becomes what it was meant to become at night, a safe house for time. Outside, if there is wind where you are, let it be your desert wind. Let it move across the edges of your thoughts, smoothing them, covering sharp footprints with a softer layer. If there is no wind, imagine it anyway. A gentle breeze traveling over dunes, over ruined bricks, over reeds that bend and return. Somewhere far away in the ancient land between rivers, the Euphrates continues. It carries water in the dark. It does not panic. It does not hurry. It simply flows. And above it, Venus returns in its slow pattern, faithful as breath. That is the kind of wisdom we can keep tonight. Not an answer, but a rhythm. A rhythm says you don't have to force the next moment. The next moment will come. So let your breathing become your rhythm. In 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. If counting feels too active, let the numbers go. Keep only the softness of the pace. Now imagine walking out of the museum. You move through the last gallery, past glass cases that glow like warm windows. You pass the tablet once more without turning your head because you trust it will still be there. You step into the lobby. The air changes. You feel the quiet of a place that has done its work. You push open the door and the night outside meets you gently. Perhaps there are streetlights or moonlight, or the faint glow of a distant city. Perhaps there is rain tapping somewhere, or the hush of dry air. Whatever it is, it does not demand anything from you. It simply exists. You take one slow breath in the open night, and then you return to your own room, your own bed, your own safe space. If you are already there, imagine it becoming a little softer, as if the story has placed an extra blanket over everything. Imagine your room as your personal archive, where you can store the day in quiet drawers and close them. Here, no one rests alone. Every listener is another small lamp in the dark, and every comment, when you're ready, adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. If you'd like to interact before you drift, you can answer softly, "Where are you listening from tonight? And what is the gentlest sound near you right now?" And if you don't want to type, that's perfectly fine. You can let the answers stay inside you, like a secret note folded into clay. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below. A single sentence is enough. Something simple like, "I'm listening from Chicago and I can hear the rain." Or, "I'm listening from California and the house is quiet." Or, "I'm listening from somewhere warm and I can hear a fan." If this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. Don't forget to subscribe for more peaceful nighttime journeys. Now we lower the lights all the way. We return in imagination to the glass case. The tablet lies still. The question rests inside it, and you can leave it there, safely, without carrying it onto your pillow. If the gods are wise, why hide knowledge? Let it sleep. Let the lists sleep. Let the letters sleep. Let your own thoughts sleep. And as the desert wind continues to move over ancient dust, you are allowed to drift too, slowly, gently, into a deep, calm, healing sleep, where nothing needs to be solved and everything can simply be. Before sleep takes you, imagine one last scene, slow as a tide. The museum is dark now, but the tablet's case still holds a faint glow, like a lantern left in a hallway. Outside, the desert is wide and the rivers continue their steady work. You can picture sand drifting grain by grain, smoothing broken steps, making everything softer without erasing what mattered. You can picture a scribe setting down the stylus, washing clay from fingertips, and exhaling, satisfied that the day has been recorded and released. You can picture a messenger arriving home, pouch empty, shoulders light, because the letter has reached its place. And you can picture yourself doing the same, arriving home inside your own body. Inhale and feel the chest widen. Exhale and let the belly soften. If a final thought appears, thank it gently. Then place it on the shelf beside the ancient question. The shelf is steady, the night is kind, you are safe to sleep. When sleep comes, let it come like a river, quiet and sure tonight. Good night.